Are you wondering how you can learn more about food? Well, you're in the right place. This is the Chakula podcast, brought to you by the Root to Food Initiative, a show that celebrates authentic Kenyan dishes and serves you hot conversations about food in Kenya from an economic, social, and political lens. Sema nasi kwenye social media at Root to Food on Instagram, at Root to Food on Twitter, and Root to Food on Facebook. And now, here's your host, Felistas Mwalia.
Hello, and karibuni tena to another episode of the Chakula podcast. We have had interesting chats around matters of food in the past weeks. We are continuing with the same conversation, but with a focus on the informal food systems or the informal food sector. I'll be speaking to Dauti Kahura, a socio-political commentator and all-round observer of Kenya's contemporary reality. Food kiosks, or vibandas, as they are locally known, are such a central cog in Kenya's food frameworks. As they are more than just food points, they have become part of our social context, where people meet to eat, exchange news, build friendship, and gather sustenance. So karibu sana Dauti.
Thank you very much for having me here.
I'm glad you managed to create time to join us today. Nice to finally meet you.
Thank you very much. My pleasure.
Yeah, to start us off, what's your favorite meal in kibanda? Na ni wapi huko tunaweza kuja tukule pia?
My favorite food in kibanda ni chapati na madondo.
Kwenye wajui madondo ni?
Madondo, in other words, it's beans.
Mm-hmm.
Fried beans with which has some stew with some potatoes to spice up the stew. It's affordable. Mm-hmm. It's nutritious. Mm-hmm. It's very well done. Where I eat the chapatis, the chapatis are very sweet, big enough. I mean, I just if I take two with a plate of bean stew, I'm good to go. At a price you can't imagine, at just about 70 shillings.
Most people call this food kiosk kibandaski as a way to add flavor to the name. Others call it kwamadhe to bring that home connection, and others just call it kibanda. You can start us off by painting a picture for us on what really a kibanda is and what uniqueness do they have.
A kibanda is a shed. It's a ramshackle shed. You not like what you see. What goes behind in that shed, its food is fresh, it's cooked as you see it. The food is cheap, but a kibanda is more than food. It brings people together. It's a place where you meet all types of people, big and small. Generally, it's for kibandas who are started off construction sites. Because the construction people need to eat, and need to eat good food. So that's why in kibandas, food is good and nutritious. Chapati, ugali.
Managu.
Traditional foods like managu, osuga. I mean, and all the traditional vegetables that, we know them. So it brings people together, camaraderie. You go there, you meet, you talk politics, you talk social issues, you gossip about this, the current affairs. So as we were eating, we also tunachapa story. We are beating stories, quote unquote. It's a commercial break before us guys going back to wherever work back to work. Yes. Over half the population of Nairobi people feed off vibandas. They feed off vibanda because I've told you the food is fresh. Never mind the structure. Forget about the structure or the seating arrangement. It's not what you would expect in a restaurant. But that's not what takes people to a vibanda. What takes people to a vibanda are two things. It's the freshness of the food, the spiciness of the food, and the affordability. With less than 100 shillings, you can afford to eat a proper meal. Chapati and beans, ugali and matumbo. Matumbo are intestines or offals. With your 100 shillings, you can eat ugali and beef stew, meat, which in any other place, you wouldn't get it with 100 bob. And then there are vegetables that are added onto it. Cabbages, traditional vegetables like osuga, managu, kunde, and you have a full stomach with just about between 70 shillings to 100 bob. It's manageable for kawaida people who work in Nairobi or who wants to find a place to go and eat good food.
Okay, it seems from what you've said, it seems most of Nairobi food purchases are from the informal food vendors, or you can call them vibandas, and that over 80% of consumer food purchased in Nairobi is bought in the informal food sector. How has COVID affected this informal food sector?
It did affect them very much because you remember when the quasi lockdown was effected from March 13th, precisely by the government, for the next 2 months, all those places had to be closed. It therefore meant that people who rely on these vibandas, who get their daily meals from these vibandas, did not get a place to eat, because other than vibandas, any other place, food is not affordable. And affordable, I mean, if food begins to be over 200 shillings, it then means many of Nairobi people could not eat.
Yeah.
And so what happened is that as the quasi lockdown eased, or Mama Vibandas found a way of coming back also to sell food to these people, she again met new challenges. And the new challenges were this: the people since had also been laid off, didn't have a place to eat, but they still needed to go and look for work. It meant that the only place again they could meet, it was a Mama Vibanda.
Yeah.
But again, they could not afford the food. But as the Vibandas found a way of opening up,
even after the easement of the curfew,
lockdown, and the curfew, they went back to making their normal foods. And these people also found a way of coming back to.
So basically, what you're trying to say is that even after all the losses they incurred during the lockdown period,
yes,
it means that right now they can recover from the economic shock.
Oh, they will in the fullness of time. It's not as bad as it was in May and June. So now they're coming back. The markets have been opened. The curfew hours have been shortened. The lockdown basically has been done away with by the government. So what we have is people have gone back to their places of work. So they can be able to again start affording food, even though there have been arrears and debts have piled up. But since these are regular customers, the ladies not the people who run vibandas are not worried that their clients will run away with their money.
But what I believe, Corona is here to stay.
Yes.
How in your view will our current COVID-19 policies shape access to food and social spaces, mainly for casual laborers?
I'll tell you this, and I'll be very frank. They were not observing social distance. You will go there and they just eat so long as they would wash their hands. Well, they at least observe the hygiene of washing their hands.
Is it because of the culture that they used to sit together and eat together?
It's culture, but also they don't believe that they don't believe this COVID is real. We would go there into these vibandas and would ask, ulishasikia mtu yote amepata COVID, umesikia? Have you had anybody? They would persuade themselves that I haven't. I haven't seen. Come on, this is it's happening to those people there, wherever that there is. So there was that camaraderie of people who visit vibandas have a way of not believing some of these things. It can be a bit tragic and it can be catastrophic. But they just sat normally. They did not social distance. How
about right now that Uhuru has eased all the...
It's gone back to normal.
No social distancing.
In the vibandas, I have not yet seen. Initially, they would pretend they are social distancing. And the social distancing, like I'm sitting here and, possibly Dari is sitting there. But vibandas by nature are not big places. So, and there's free sitting. So the other social distancing would be, okay, I take my food and then I move outside beyond the kibanda structure, because the kibanda structure is a small structure. We couldn't all fit there. People don't fit there. So you take your food and you go and sit a little bit far away. And as you enjoy your meal.
Understanding how important these informal food vendors are, and the fact that many Nairobians eat from these food vendors or vibandas, how is the government supporting them, specifically county governments?
The county government, whether national or county government, has not, in my best of knowledge, hasn't been supporting them. In fact, the reverse is the true. They have been levying these people taxes. They pay taxes on a daily basis. Maybe in future, the government, with the county government, will have to find a way of factoring this big economy, because these vibandas serve very many people in terms of their food access. But right now, in my knowledge, I don't think any government, whether national or county, is doing anything to factor in or see how they can work with this vibanda.
And how are they treated specifically with kanjo?
No, very bad, very bad. Part of the reason why these structures are ramshackle is because they are not allowed to build a permanent structure, even a decent. That's why they look like hovels. They just look terribly bad because the bylaws do not allow.
And yet they have a lot to offer.
Of course, you can imagine the kind of their contribution to the economy, the many people they feed. And so their structures, we call them informal structures or whatever, vibandas. The equivalent in English is shed, because they are not allowed to put anything. And so their relationship with the county government is adversarial. You know, they are seen as people who are not supposed to be there in the first place. So they are harassed by the local authorities in terms of being asked to pay bribes if they have to continue existing. The county government actually relationship with this vibanda is predatory, because they predate on them. Instead of helping them, they predate on them, because the bylaws, and these are colonial bylaws, do not allow for the existence of these vibandas.
It's so sad.
It is indeed.
How do you think Kenyans can come in to save this system? The fact that many Kenyans actually eat from vibandas.
The only way they can come to is to plead with the county government to factor in this unstructured economy. This is what you would want to call informal economy. If they could be, there is a way that the county government would factor in and recognize them as legitimate places of eating, and then because the only way the people can help is to say, look, this is where we come to eat these places. Please, can you allow them to be legal, because they operate as
illegally.
They operate illegally.
They don't pay licenses?
They do, but still, they're still not seen as how am I gonna put formal, like part of the like place where people go to eat. We can see it. The first place would be to be allowed to make nice sheds. For example, big one with the nice places to sit. They may not be chairs, but forms and and it's nicely done. Simple but decent. Even that they are not allowed, because the law, the bylaws, the city bylaws, for example, which I've told you are colonial, do not recognize that kind of. So we'll begin by first changing the bylaws so that then we can have these sheds.
Okay, interesting facts. To take you back a bit, what accounts for the high popularity of food kiosks or vibandas or the informal food sector in Kenya's urban spaces like Nairobi, Nakuru, Kisumu, and maybe Mombasa?
Great question. Vibandas started in areas where there was casual laborers, like industrial area. In the 1970s. Industrial area was mostly owned by Muindis, the Asians, who ran the factories. This is casual laborer. So, you can only pay so much to a casual laborer. You never afford to go to a proper restaurant. So, these women came with an ingenious way of coming in with the food and setting it outside the factories. So once they are released for their lunchtime, they would go to these women who've carried their food in huge baskets. And so people would see it and they would start. Food was cheap and it was fresh because she's made it in her house. So the food was good and nutritious. But it became tiresome. So the people told her, look, why don't you just set some shade there and start cooking there with firewood. You can collect firewood around here, So that's what happened. So by and large, people could not afford to eat in restaurants. Remember, anything beyond, I've told you, 100, 150, 200 bob, because you're being charged for the seat and for the space, we can't afford. So people would go to these vibandas and sheds because they provided affordable food. Many of the people in Nairobi are wage laborers. As a wage laborer, you can only be paid so much. And so you can only also afford so much to eat. And you need to eat anyway. For you to be productive, you must eat something. So this is how they started. So they started off construction. And then there was a lot of construction sites around Nairobi, in the industrial area. And all this upcoming real estate. Where were they going to eat? It's the vibandas. So the vibandas provided food. And by and large, it also became a GST. There are some sophisticated vibandas. One of the most famous vibandas were off Serena. We used to call it Serena B because people couldn't afford to go to the Serena. So the vibandas, Procession Way, you remember Procession Way? Procession Way was the vibandas. before it was constructed, just directly opposite Serena. So we would call Serena B. And so people would go there with a bit sophisticated vibandas. So with your little money, about 100 bob, 120 shillings, 150, you eat your ugali and tilapia, ugali and fish, ugali and beef stew, in a nicely place with some shade. Yeah. Shed, nevertheless. Yeah. So that's how they grew. And so some people have transited those vibandas, like the Kosewe food. He started in Kaloleni with a kibanda.
For real?
Yes. Vibanda. He worked his way through. He came to railways. The other big vibandas were at the railway station.
Yeah.
If you can remember, along there. Those were also vibandas, but a bit sophisticated vibandas. And there was some arrangement with the city council. They would pay some money to the city council. And now look at Kosewe. Then Keswe transited to Cameo, right in the CBD, in Cameo building, and next to Nation Center.
Okay, interesting.
Yeah. So Kosewe is an example of a person who started as a kibanda. Yeah. So kibanda, people who went to kibandas were seen as not sophisticated, not as educated. People were not as their cuisine was not sophisticated. The class, all these things.
Yeah.
But now this food has been mainstreamed. Vibandas have been mainstream.
Yeah, for sure.
They have been mainstream. Even sophisticated people.
Visit vibandas.
Yeah, whatever your definition of a sophisticated person is, go to vibandas. I go to a kibanda. I'm not saying I'm sophisticated. The vibandas have been mainstreamed food because then they also serve. But part of why the food in vibandas is attractive is that the food it's being cooked as you watch. Never mind it's being cooked in the open.
Yeah.
But you can see it being cooked. It is fresh. Food in restaurants, and people who eat in restaurants must excuse me for this. Sometimes the food is not fresh. Oftentimes the food is not fresh.
Because of customers?
No, it's put in the freezers. They need to defreeze the chicken, if, for example. Then the chicken that is eaten in the vibandas, it's a kuku kienyeji. It's original. It's kuku that has been eating. It's not. There's a term for it. It's not tethered. So its meat may be tough, but it's very sweet and very nutritious. So
in your estimation or in your assessment, can we say that vibandas have long replaced the family dinner table as a space for nutrition and bonding?
In a way, yes, because nowadays I see people buying chapatis, for example, off vibandas. They say, look, instead of going through this laborious work of making chapatis, why don't you just go and buy them from Mama Nani? So in a way, yes. So they also the people buy like chapatis. The best is chapatis and the beans sometimes, where beans also has a process of you have to boil it and but the kibanda from the kibanda they'll do all that for you. So you go and you can buy in the package. And also people eat, a lot in kibandas. They eat. People have stopped viewing vibandas as a place where you would not want your friend to see you.
Yeah.
I used to have such friends that they don't want to be seen
in a kibanda.
It doesn't mean if you go to a kibanda you're poor, you can't afford food in a restaurant. That's not what it means. It just means today I just feel like going to eat to Mama Nani. I think I want to eat that tilapia from Lake Victoria and brown ugali, which oftentimes maybe it's not served in these restaurants. They serve white ugali.
And if it's served, it's expensive.
It's very expensive and it's kidogo. And when you eat in a kibanda, you can always say, I did not have enough. Please give me. And they will.
Yeah,
like ugali, you can be given an extra piece of ugali,
Yeah. So Dauti, as we wind down, now with all this hygiene and social distancing rules, how do you see vibandas coping with these new COVID-19 measures?
Well, they'll have to up their game. They'll have to create social distancing, and they'll also have to. Many of them, like they at their extra cost, they've been buying sanitizers for people and the water, so they're spending more water.
People.
It was not factored in, and they have not yet increased the prices. So I guess they'll have to find a way of coping because like you said, it's COVID-19 is not going away.
Yeah.
So they'll have to find a way of leveraging their clients as they increase their hygiene and distancing, social distancing.
Thank you so much, Dauti. We've reached to an end of another episode of the Chakula podcast. Asante sana. I hope we'll have another session, probably in a kibanda one of these fine days.
Not a problem, and many thanks for hosting me.
Thank you for joining us on this interesting conversation. See you next time. Make sure to visit our website, www.roottofood.org, where you can subscribe to the show on Apple Podcast or SoundCloud at Chakula Podcast, so you'll never miss a show. While you are at it, if you find value in this show, we'd appreciate a rating and review on Apple Podcast, or if you'd simply tell a friend about the show, that will help us too. Thank you. Bye.